Had a number of people join us in the last 2 minutes. So welcome to commissioner, staff, and community representatives who have joined us. We appreciate you being here. And it is 9 o'clock. Michael, would you like to get started, or did you want to wait another minute?
Well, I think we will get started. It's 9:01, and others can catch up. And I just want to welcome all of you to our first commission customer community meeting for 2021. I'm going to be serving as the moderator today, and to moderate an illustrious panel of 3 commissioners who I will introduce in a couple of minutes. Our format today is I have some prepared questions for the commissioners. What I'm hoping is through their answers that we can, at least as best we can through Zoom, is have a bit of a dialogue and get questions and comments from you in who are participating in this meeting. And the best way to do that is through the chat function. If you have a comment or a question, and Amanda will flag that for me. Because I'm working off of, I can't focus on more than one thing at a time.
I don't have audio.
So she's gonna help. She's gonna help me. The reason you see the topic, fostering the commission and customer community relationship, and you may be asking, well, why are we talking about that now? Relations have always been extremely good between our owner communities and the district, and we take a lot, as at staff and the commission level, we take a lot of pride in working together. And there's really, since I've been here, there's been what I would call harmonious relationships. And if you think of regional government working effectively together, the district is really just a model example of that. But things are shifting in terms of our challenges. Since our beginning in the 1920s, the commission could work effectively in isolation. Every time there was a new regulation, the commission could build a new addition to the treatment plant. Technologies were available to do so. Most of those improvements were funded with federal grants, so it didn't have a big impact on those who paid service charges. And even extending service into the suburbs was easier because there was less population and there are fewer conflicts. And so work just kind of hummed along for a long time. But as you know, in your governments and we here at the district, we're being squeezed in a way because we're now dealing with infrastructure that's approaching 100 years old. The regulations are becoming even more restrictive. Our water is so clean that getting a next percentage of cleanliness is not affordable. And new things like PFAS and chloride and nutrients are coming in, and we're dealing with that require new approaches. The other thing is, there's a level of certainty that we're dealing with, and that's being driven somewhat by climate change. We experienced that with the 2018 flood event, and what an impact it had on the district in terms of our ability to manage flows. We did so, but it was on the fringe. Natural resources are are becoming more and more scarce, which increases our costs. And so we realize that that in order for us to be successful at the district, communities have a more active role to play and we need you to succeed, and we need you as an active partner in this work. And just look at Yahara Winds. This is a really good example of what our future looks like. It's a window into our future where we develop a plan of how we can take a watershed-based approach to make water cleaner instead of the traditional approach of just treating it at the treatment plant at hundreds of millions of dollars more than what we're going to be doing with Yahara Winds. We're doing the same thing with chloride management, and now with inflow and infiltration. When we met with you as communities in 2019 and asked what were the top issues that were on your mind, you said resiliency, because we just came off the flooding event. You said the finances and how are we going to manage our finances long term, and also on communication and how do we communicate and how do you communicate with your public, because we don't communicate with your citizens and those who are paying the direct bill for services. You do, and how do we help and assist you in communicating on some of these issues that are driving our rates and how they can help. So you can see that there's just a lot of opportunities here where we can work together, and there's things on the horizon of taking a look at our rate structure, which we haven't evaluated for over 20 years, and a lot has changed since then. And of course, items like equity and looking at equitable charging and equitable financing and those types of issues. So that's why we're having this conversation now. We have three panelists here today that include the commissioners who have their feet strongly planted in both the commission world and in the local community world. That's why we have these three. Commissioner and our president, Tom Hovel, he has been on the district's commission since 1993. It was just 2 or 3 years after he started as a city planner in Fitchburg. And Tom, he just recently retired in 2018 as a city planner after 32 years. So Tom understands city planning and the breadth of where we've come from and where we're going as a commissioner. Commissioner Tom Wilson, he's been on the commission since 2015, and he is an administrator, attorney, and treasurer for the town of Westport. Most of you know Tom. You know him personally. You work directly with him. He's been in Westport 22 years, and he also serves on the Yahara Winds Executive Committee. So he's extremely busy with district events. And then Commissioner Ken Clark, who's the president and COO of Total Water Treatment Systems, and has longevity there as well, being there with that company for 20 years, and has also been a commissioner since 2015, but has also been a trustee at the Village of DeForest and on their board for 7 years. So these three individuals have seen both sides of the district, being a community and being on the commission. So that's why they are here with us today. So I'd like to start out with our first question to the commissioners, and I'd like to start with President Hovel. And the question is, what is something you'd like customer communities to know about the commission and the district that they may not know?
Well, thank you, Michael. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. I think this is a good thing, and we've had our customer meetings in prior years and they've been at the district. So this we're hoping will work well virtually as we all get through the COVID pandemic. I was thinking about that question, and it occurred to me that one thing is that just this year, or season, I should say, because beginning in November or so, we had this, in October, we stopped doing the disinfection, and we've been rebuilding our disinfection system. And so one thing that occurred to me is that when the disinfection originally put in place, I think it was in 1986, it was the largest UV, ultraviolet light disinfection system in the world at that time. So I think that kind of shows a lot of things about the district, that it's kind of, it undertakes groundbreaking work, and some of it in relationship to the university. But we're always looking for ways to be better and more efficient and use, say, for example, UV light rather than chemicals in order to disinfect the wastewater stream. So that's the one takeaway that I think I'd like them to know about the district, is that I think that disinfection system basically kind of sets forth the whole district priority in terms of how we look at things.
Thank you, President Hovel. You want to jump in here, Commissioner Wilson?
I'm good at jumping. So everybody knows this. This is totally unrehearsed. So I just want you all to know that we're using our own thoughts on what's happening here, and Michael did send us some questions that he thought he might ask us. How we're going to all answer those in an hour when I'm involved, I don't know. One thing that comes to my mind that I want people to know is between the commission and the staff. And I've worked in a lot of organizations over my many years involved in local government and state government and regional government. These are unbelievably smart and caring people. Our commission is comprised of people that are like me and in government, people that are in business like Ken. We got chemists, and if Michael would have had the opportunity, I wish he put up the whole commission so you can see it's not just three old white guys. And then the other perspective is the staff, and this includes Michael, and I hope he doesn't get red-faced, but there's you've got people like Marty Griffin that are absolutely the top of their class when it comes to their profession across the entire country, and all those folks are working for you. So that's the one thing that I want our owners to know, that you have a commission that's really geared towards helping you out, and a staff that is top-notch running this district. And I think we're all the luckier for it. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, Michael, I would echo Tom's sentiment on the staff of the district. That's what I've experienced also. I would describe, on this question, I would describe the district as a quality of life entity. And the reason I say that, and that might sound kind of odd to the people in the meeting today, but as far as the district is concerned, or the residents of the area and the owner communities, if we lose the ability to flush our toilet or put water down the drain for a day or two, we've got an inconvenience. If we lose that ability for a week, we've got a big problem. And if we lose that ability for 10 to 14 days, we've got a pretty serious quality of life issue. And the reason I bring this up is because when I first got involved with the district and I figured that out, my focus then went to, well, is the district set up for backup? Is there redundancy? It normally receives 40 million gallons a day.
Ken, yes. You don't want to say backup when you're talking about the sewers. Okay.
Okay. There's a flow issue, Tom. But so that's been somewhat my focus, and I think that's important for the owner communities to understand that this plant, this district needs to operate correctly, or we've got a big problem in our communities. And that was something that stuck out to me about the first couple of months I got involved with the district.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. As I hope it's evident already that these commissioners have a strong sense of rapport with each other and work together very well. So thank you for that. The second question is, and I'm going to start with Commissioner Wilson. What do you enjoy most about your role as a commissioner?
Well, I'm a government guy, so I like working for our local governments that are part of the district. That's what I am on the commission to do, and being able to do that with this group that's the commission is excellent. So that's me. I really feel that I'm representing local governments. I know I'm elected by the towns, but I'm always thinking about what is Middleton thinking, or what's the town of Dunn thinking, what are our communities thinking about what we're doing. So I just want to mention that level of what makes me feel good about being on the commission.
Commissioner Clark?
Michael, I personally have a goal to stay involved with a community, with my community, and being on a commission helps me achieve that goal, and it's something I try to encourage others to do also.
President Hovel.
Thank you, Michael. I think it's working with the staff and the other commissioners in advancing the interests of our local units that we serve, and the interests of the district. And in that way, we do a lot of different things in promoting, I think, as Ken was hitting on, the fact of reliability within the overall system. So it's working with the staff, which Tom had mentioned earlier, is very good. And the commission itself, the different reports that we get and input and discussions we have are all really interesting. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, President Hovel. Now we're going to move into really the meat of our discussion here, and I'd like to start with you, President Hovel. And the commission as a whole represents owner communities. And how do you personally think about that responsibility? And what does representation mean to you in your role?
Well, representation, I think when we act in the best interests of the units that we serve, their owners, so to speak, we also are acting in the best interests of the district. And so that then also translates to, if we act in the best interests of the district, we act in the best interests of our owner communities. And to me, that's what representation means, that we're making the decisions to do things somewhat differently over the past several years than we did when I got on the commission, 20 some, almost 30 years ago. And just one story, as some of the people have heard me say this, when I got on the commission years ago, the story always was that the less the district is in the news, the better off it is. And if it's in the news, it's usually for a bad reason. And then one of the reasons we hired Michael was because he came with a different mindset. He came with the mindset that it's time now that we have to start engaging the different communities, our communities that we serve, or now we represent as our owner communities. And we have to take that seriously, because the challenges that we face, we saw that when we hired Michael, were different and are different and require different levels of cooperation and resources and so forth than occurred, say, 28 years ago. So I think that's really what it means, that when we work in the best interests of the district, we work in the best interests of the owner communities and vice versa. When we're working in the best interests of the owner communities, we're working in the best interests of the district.
And those interests can be diverse and with each of the communities, and that's what I appreciate. It's not a one size fits all. All of your community needs are different, and I have to go back to being a moderator here. So Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, Michael, I guess I feel obligated to do a good job as a representative of the DC CVA. They appointed me to the commission, and I think the Dane County Cities and Village Associations expecting quality representation from my position and others. I don't have as much interaction with Bob and Judd and Steve like I used to, but that doesn't mean I don't feel obligated when I come to a meeting to represent that group the best I can.
Thank you. Thank you. This next question is, the commission recently had a study session on the concept of ownership and answering the question, who owns the district? The commission had I would say a very robust discussion about this. And it led to referring to our member communities as owners instead of customers. So you've probably heard in some, or seen and noticed in some recent communications, we've used the term owners instead of customer communities. And I'd like to start with Commissioner Clark on this. And what are your takeaways from that robust discussion the commission had? And what is, from your perspective, the substance behind the shift?
Well, I think owner is the appropriate phrase to use on this topic, because really the district serves, there's a lot of different pipes that come into that district, but the customer, or the customers, the owner communities are the ones that are paying the bill back to the district. The other thing is too, is I like the phrase ownership because each member community, if they wanted to, has the ability to put in a treatment plant, handle these things differently, and they choose to work with a district. And I think the phrase ownership holds a lot of weight, and it should, with the communities that are paying the bills.
Thank you. And Commissioner Wilson.
Yeah, we did have quite a robust conversation about this. It was probably a little bit more than I was anticipating at the commission level. And you know, the word owner, I think, is appropriate in how we have to have our representation for who we're appointed by, and also because of our relationship with the communities that formed us. You know, in kind of answering the last question about representation, it kind of comes forward into this definition that we made a change from customer to ownership. When I worked in my private law firm years ago, and we would come to the commission, and a couple of those commissioners are still here. I knew every one of those commissioners, but every time that I came for some kind of an annexation or some kind of change that I would need for whatever my community, I was scared to death. I didn't know what was going to happen. And that should not have been the case, because we formed you. And so now I think what you see is this kind of a shift that's gone over the last few years, that we're really there to work with these our owner communities. We're there to represent you on the commission, and we're there all working together to make this district the best it can be, rather than have someone like the city of Middleton come in with an extension or an annexation and be, oh my gosh, this might be a problem. There might be some concerns that we can't address. They'll get addressed, and it'll be in a much different type of a much different type of experience, let's say, than maybe it has been in the past. And I think our conversation reflected that in the difference between owner and customer. Michael, it was a long conversation, but it was well worth having. And I wish there would have been more people, more of our owners watching us.
Commissioner Hovel.
Thanks, Michael. I think as Ken said, we are appointed by certain groups. Tom's appointed by some of the towns. Ken and I are appointed by the Dane County Cities and Villages, their executive group for those communities the district serves. And then, of course, there are some that are appointed by the city of Madison, and then Mary is appointed by the DCCVA as well. But I think the idea of that then transmits to the fact that they are the owners, because we represent the communities. They basically own us, and that the whole idea of owner gives them that stake. And when you're an owner versus a customer or a ratepayer, I think you have that term just denotes a much higher stake within the situation. And so they have a stake in what we do, and we obviously have a stake in what they do. So I think that better fits. And I kind of go back to a year ago when COVID started, and there was the term that we're all in this together. The idea that with the social distancing that we're all used to now, the mask wearing, things like that. They were coining that term, we're all in this together, but really that we're all in this together fit with the district well before it became the term of the day back when COVID started. I think the other thing that is important here is that why we view them as owners is that a lot of the responsibility that we have is for the infrastructure and employees to run that infrastructure, make the plans, but the wastewater comes from our communities, our owner communities, and they're the ones that are closest to the customer. We've got this kind of, we're more separated as a district from the customer, but they're the ones that set their rates, using our rates as part to help set their rates. And they're the ones that have much more influence and so forth on their local units because they're the closest to them. They're at that basic level, whether it be the village presidents or alderpersons or village board members. And I think that's important because so much of what we do gets down to individual choices. And you see that, for example, in our pre-treatment process, where we have pre-treatment efforts with certain industries to avoid heavy loadings into the district stream. And we did the same thing with dentists and certain amalgams and so forth that they work with every day. But that's all important because it helps reduce the waste into our stream and then makes it more efficient and easier for us to run our operation of cleaning. So we're kind of going back in some ways back to that. And that's where our customers are important because they can help us do that type of work. And it's the same thing with inflow and infiltration. We've been working on that over the past year or so. And that was one of the top issues that came up a couple of years ago. And that's important to us because people's bills are in part based on the flow that goes to the district. And when you get a lot of inflow and infiltration into the district system, the bills go up. So we were a little more fortunate this past year. We didn't have the heavy rainstorms as occurred in prior years, but the groundwater is still high. And a lot of communities are trying to adjust to that high groundwater situation and that inflow and infiltration. So I think the key takeaway is, as owners, we can engage them better in terms of looking at our interests and their interests, which, as I said before, are really probably the same, in working on issues and that things that we're going to face now and over the coming years.
Thank you, President Hovel. It's important to note, many of you who are on this meeting know this, but some of you may not, is the district went through a major change in governance in 2015, going from a 5-member commission where all the representatives were appointed by the county executive to a 9-member commission that were appointed by our owners. And so we moved to a representative form of government, and from just being, appointed by, one person. And that is really substantive in terms of our orientation. And the commission got to work right away after 2015 of taking a blank slate and saying, well, how do we want to govern under this new structure, and actually developed a policy book, and that's based on the Carver policy governance model, and really outlines specifically the roles and responsibilities of the commission and our outcomes as a district. And we have 4 outcomes that we're trying to deliver on every year, and all of our staff work is oriented towards delivering on those outcomes. But what's so important with all of this is, how do we now evolve this relationship with owners now that we have new governance in place and we're operating? And so this leads to my next question. I'm going to start with Commissioner Clark. Is given this new governance and also the new perspective of who our owners are, that they're not customers, they're really stakeholders in the district, how do you envision the relationship evolving between the commission and owners, and what can commissioners do to nurture this relationship, and what can owners do? Commissioner Clark?
I think collectively, both the owner communities and the commission could identify some ways to communicate a little bit more often than we currently do, and we don't do that very much at all right now. When I was attending the village board meetings, it was a little bit easier for me to just kind of give an update on what was going on at the district. And I've not done a good job of that since I've been off the village board. But I'm interested to hear what the customer or the owner communities have to say on this one also. The one thing, if the commissioners or the management of the district attend more, now it's online, it's a little bit easier, more village board meetings, community meetings, those types of things. I think it's always helpful to have a representative from the district, from an upper level management standpoint, and a commissioner in parallel with each other, because some of the questions that I have taken from the owner communities, I didn't have the detail or the background on some of those things to give an appropriate answer. And so I find myself going back to the district and then going back to the member community, where I think we could all probably do a little bit better job of identifying ways to bridge that communication gap. The other thing I would also throw out there too is there are probably in some of the owner community within your boundaries, there are probably some either heavier industrial users or BOD dischargers that could be identified, independent businesses that are increasing the cost of your residents' sewer bills, where maybe they should be metered on their own, those types of things. So that was a couple things that I thought of.
Thank you. President Hovel?
Well, I think I concur with Ken that we need more dialogue with the customer communities. I know the DCCVA often, meets once a year, and you do it, and at times well, because you're giving an idea on the budget and what the commission's looking at for budget. So that kind of gets into the thing that we're the district is a highly infrastructure intensive organization. So much of what we do is related to our infrastructure, and that goes for the number of employees that we employ, what their roles are. And so, more recently, I think Yahara Wind showed this, that we're trying to figure out ways to avoid doing those massive projects to reduce pollutant loadings. In that case, it was mainly phosphorus, but Yahara Winds gives us benefits in other ways, probably also reduces nitrogen, and it shows the cooperation that can be had by working with different communities, stormwater systems, or in the district as well, and some other outside partners. When you partner together, you can reduce that cost of what would have been I think it was estimated to be over $100 million treatment plant addition at that point in time. So the other things we're doing, where we're working with local units, it's on the Saltwise, where they have been working in the district, been part of that to reduce or better spread salt in the wintertime. Then there's a water softener project that they've been working with, district's been collaborating with McFarland on that. And then there's also leaf pickup and other environmental initiatives that the district's always been a part of to assist our local communities and to help educate the public as well in what it means to be putting your leaves in the street or whatever, or to avoid that, and why do you avoid that. So I think the thing that's important is the dialogue, so we can tell them what we're facing and we can get their ideas as to, measures or whatever that we can be taken to solve or mitigate the issues that we face. More heads are better than one, and I think we kind of see that with the larger commission now. We get into more robust discussions, I think, than when the commission was only 5 members. And we're going to be facing some challenges that are going to be coming or may come. The biggest one is probably now the PFAS issue, and we hear a lot about that with firefighting foam, but it's also in a lot of our daily products, our clothing. I think Marty said that it's in dental floss, it's in our carpets, and so our nonstick pans. And so that's going to be an issue that we're going to have to face, probably, depending on what our testing comes back. And that could be a major issue for the district. So that's where we're going to need our local communities to help us sort through that problem. Thank you.
Thank you, President Hovel. Commissioner Wilson?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. How do we see our relationship evolving? Because it continues to do that. So we are, with our customer communities, MMSD is a partner in many, many projects. And not only are we partners with our customer communities, but we also serve them. It's like getting a double deal out of this. So projects like MAM Swap, where I sit on the I&E advisory committee, and there's Kathy Lake from MMSD right there with us. With Wisconsin Saltwise, you're going to see Marty and Kathy Lake again, heavily involved. They're not only representing the district, they're thinking about the customer communities. Or you have groups like Yahara Wind, certainly, that was put together. MMSD is a partner in that, but at the same time, it's also with Marty Griffin involved, representing all the communities. And one of the more recent projects, which is ongoing, which I think is also very important, is the Yahara Clean project, which is just going to add and assist us at Yahara Winds. It looks at things from a different perspective. It involves private entities as well, and the Clean Lakes Alliance is putting that together, themselves representing several business interests and personal interests. So I think the evolution is that MMSD is not by itself. It's representing all our owners, and there's just it's an extra thing for all of our local communities to be able to accomplish the things that we have to do to meet permits, to serve our own customers, our own residents, so that they're safe and they have reliable service. And hopefully, with all the eyes that are on us, in a financially responsible way. So that I see that continuing, if not increasing, as we as the commissioners have talked about trying to involve our customer communities more. And I'm going to give an example. We have talked about trying to be more open at these meetings, right? Trying to have access, and we use these types of meetings to get the word out about MMSD. But yet, at our last commission meeting, we had our good Greg Freeze from the city of Madison. I think it was there, might have been the only person other than district staff or commissioners that were at a meeting. Now, that didn't mean things are going really well, or nobody cares. And nobody cares usually because things are going well. But, I think that we talked about taking some responsibility on ourselves to try and get more involvement at least our meetings. Hey, you can tune in and you can listen to Ken drone on about something. Oh, sorry, Ken, I meant myself, drone on about something. And at the same time, you can be doing work because we're doing it all virtually. But at least that way you get a feel for, first of all, a wonderful staff that's there, and also this commission that just has unbelievable individuals with wonderful skills, and you can see really how they're working together. So all the people that are on here, if you can, the one thing that I'd ask is if you can pay attention to meetings and when they are, just pop up on our Zoom and just hang out for an hour and a half or so while you're doing some paperwork and hear what's going on. And I think that you'll see the same thing. There's some really good people involved here, and they're working for us. That's my reaction to this, Michael, and I see that continuing to evolve over time and get even better.
I'm going to pause here and give the commissioners a little bit of a break, and I'd like to throw this question at those who are in this meeting, some of the owner communities, and ask the same question. What role do you think the commission should play, and what role can you play to strengthen this relationship moving forward? And maybe if you can put your idea in chat or raise your hand in chat, and then we can call on you and get you into this conversation.
Michael, Mayor Brar has his hand raised, and so does Bob Whipperfirth.
Mayor, would you like to lead things off with your comment or question?
Yeah, I would say what you're doing here is a great job. It really makes a difference. And I think if we had either once a year, there was somebody from the commission came to the city council meetings and gave the updates, that would be great. And as we open up, and if we had these meetings maybe quarterly and they were distributed over the district, that would be wonderful. And the question is, the last question is that how is the groundwater level affecting the sewer district, and how could we help? Thank you. Great job, by the way. It's really very helpful.
I'll answer the second question, Mayor. The task group that has been meeting for a year on inflow and infiltration, and which is looking at how does groundwater influence our flow getting into the pipes. that group had their final meeting yesterday before the report is presented to the commission coming up in a couple weeks here on the findings of inflow infiltration and developing a long-term program for reduction of inflow into the system through groundwater and surface water. So there's been some really good policy development work being done by 6 of our owner communities working with staff.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Hey, Michael, it's Tom. So just a piggyback on something that Mayor Brar said, which I think it's something that maybe we want to think about or consider. I'm not sure how, but it's something similar to what CARPC went through a couple of years ago, and they continue to do. They started to move some of their meetings to the local communities that are part of CARPC, of course. And I don't know that that's not something we couldn't think about once we start to get, back into in-person meetings, that maybe once in a while we take one of our meetings and move it out of our beautiful building. I know we all want people to come in and see that great meeting room and be there, but maybe that's something to think about. Working with Mike Davis maybe in Middleton and trying to meet at their wonderful meeting room at their city hall, or meeting up in DeForest, so Ken wouldn't have to travel all that way. I just think there is an opportunity that Mayor Brar has there, that he's suggesting that at least might get a little bit more involvement, perhaps from some of the other local governments who are our owners. Just a thought, and maybe something to bring up at some point. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you. And it's also good to note that in our virtual world that all of our meetings are taped and on YouTube. So for those of you who would like to see the meetings or can't attend in person, we have that there. But that's a new idea, Mayor Brar. Thank you. Bob Whipperford.
Thank you, Michael. First of all, I'd like to echo Tom's comments earlier in the meeting here about prior to 2015 that nobody wanted to go to the commission for approvals. People were scared to death because they didn't know how they were going to be treated. They didn't know if it was going to be a positive or negative outcome. There was a lot of bad feelings to the prior commission. So my hat's off to this new commission, and especially to staff. The staff is they're so professional, welcoming when you come into a meeting, and the commission, they're very professional as well. As president of the Dane County Cities and Villages Association, I have tried to attend some of your meetings periodically just to kind of observe and to keep that communication open. I'm hearing that maybe our executive committee could maybe do a better job yet with our appointees and keeping that dialogue going better than what it currently has been. So we will try to take that to heart as well. But I think that the commission and the staff I like the outreach that you're doing to the owner communities. I think that's a very positive thing. And I think, as Tom maybe mentioned, maybe just logging in now that you're virtually, we can continue to do work at home and still get a flavor for what you're doing. So my hat's off to all of you. I think you're doing great work.
We also have another question from Steve Falgren. Steve, welcome.
Steve, you're muted.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button. I would also like to echo your staff are excellent. They're responsive. They're very knowledgeable. So commissioners, please absorb that. You all know that. I was involved with some of that governance transition with Nick Zavos, Todd Schmidt, and I will have to say that it's night and day. And Tom, you think people don't care, they trust. And I hang my hat on that. And I think that it's come a long way. I think there's ways to go yet. I like the idea of meeting more often. The DCCVA meeting or the spinoff of that annually is great for the budget, but it's overwhelming. It's a lot of information. It's a lot of time absorbed. Perhaps 6 months to do that and have more questions from your owner community, administrators, finance people, things like that. Maybe we can work with Forbes and get some questions gathered, or Bob, and maybe do it that way. But I would like to see Ken occasionally. That'd be great. So thanks for having us.
Thanks, Steve. We did have a question on chat, and Amanda, would you like to read that question?
Yes, I am happy to do that. So early on, it was mentioned about equitable billing. Can the commissioners discuss further what they mean by equitable and how do they balance greenfield development versus brownfield development? And this was from Judd.
Michael, why don't you take a shot at that and we could jump in? Would that be okay?
I will, and Judd, if I get a sense for your question, this has to do more with our connection charges for new development. Is that what when a site redevelops and they get a connection charge? And what is our means to recognize that development may have already paid a connection charge into the system? Is that the nature of your question?
Yeah, and just in the equitable is a buzzword nowadays, right? So what is that? It
is.
And
so,
how you
so
guys
I'm going to give you there's two answers to this. That's a really good question, and in our new rate structure, there's a lot of detail into how we address that, and that might be what I'd like to do is maybe follow up with you directly on the answer to that one, because of how we handle that with connection charges. I couldn't even answer that question right now for you and how we handle it, because it was addressed and how we calculate that, and that even might be worth a follow up at a future customer or owner meeting on how we do that. So I owe that to you. When I was bringing up the equity concept, we have a real dichotomy going on, and you're right. I think it's our general evolution and awareness, sophistication, whatever you want to call it, around looking at our community as having a variety of needs and ability to pay. Some folks, paying a sewer and water bill is nothing. You don't really think about it. And others, they make a decision between paying for their water and sewer bill or paying their electric bill. And so we even though we're 2 steps away from the actual household, we have to be really mindful about that when we're setting rates. But we also have this dichotomy that we need adequate funding to pay for the infrastructure necessary to make sure that we fulfill our mission of protecting public health and the environment. And so just keeping rates superficially low does not serve our overall community for the long term if we're not taking care of it. And so that is the struggle we have. And if we were a city and we had direct ratepayers, we could offer rate relief. There are a lot of different programs in communities around how do you reduce a bill for certain thresholds of individuals. You as a community can do that. We don't have that relationship. So one thing with the equity front that we could pursue is if you as a group like DCCVA or the Towns Association said, we want to tackle this equity issue, and work with the district, I think we'd be all in on that discussion. Because that is that equity discussion right there is one of the ideals that the commission identified in their strategic planning. And an ideal is, how do we, as we look forward, what is the lens we look at every time we're making decisions? And equity is one of them. And that's what the commission meant when they were dealing with that. Which leads to, I'm seeing we're at about 5 minutes left, so I'm just going to pause. I'm not going to ask my last question because we don't have time. So I want to keep the conversation flowing here with additional comments and questions. And do we have any, Amanda, do we have any others who'd like to get into this conversation?
I do not have any other questions in the chat at this time, but certainly if any of the participants want to raise their hand and just ask, as you mentioned, we still have a few minutes.
I will pause here. I'd like for others to jump in and join the conversation. And remember, the question I've been asking you is how can the commission nurture a stronger relationship with you as owners, and how can you help nurture a relationship with the commission?
Michael, this is Gudibra. So I would say, is there some way cities or any other association could help you get more federal money? Because we got this 1.9 trillion, which is targeted in a way, but there may be some opportunity there. But then there's hopefully the infrastructure budget is coming, and the infrastructure is what MMSD is all about. I mean, that's a big part of the expense. And is there any way, if you need the letters from us to help write up a grant or anything which we could help you with to tap into that money? Since in the past you said there used to be quite a bit, and now that part is drying up. So could we somehow find the part, or somehow what could we do to help you?
Thank you for that offer, and that's a wonderful suggestion, especially through this funding. If there are earmarks that are identified, and we have projects that are shovel ready or can address short-term needs, there might be owner community support would be critical for that, and maybe we work with our state representatives to advance those requests and needs.
Wonderful, thank you.
Well, we have 2 minutes left, so that I'd like to say if any of Commissioner Hovel, Commissioner Clark, or Wilson have any last thoughts before I adjourn this meeting.
Yeah, Michael, I'd just like to conclude by thanking everybody again for attending. We're obviously have some issues to work on, and the communication. I think we've expressed that there's ways to probably try to improve our dialogue. But in the end, we're all in this together, and together we can work cooperatively to obtain that reliability and mitigate any large issues that we see. And then that also works to equity in my mind. That I think the key thing of equity is trying to keep our rates reasonable. And that's probably the key takeaway to me with the equity issue is how that's one of the key facets that we as a commission can do. And if we work together with our customer communities, we should be able to achieve that. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming, and hope that there's a little bit of a better understanding of how at least us three commissioners think here. But I think that pretty much reflects how everybody acts. And I think it's been a good conversation. Got a couple ideas that Michael's going to work on, it sounds like. And thank you everybody for open suggestions and showing up. And thanks Steve Falgren for the trust comment. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Michael, I'd just like to add, I want to thank everyone on the call today for getting involved with their community. You all need a pat on the back.
Thank you. I'd like to thank our panelists for well done job, and I want to thank all of you for participating today and offering comments. And the dialogue continues. And if you have additional thoughts after this meeting, please feel free to email me or the commissioners. And